If you lived anywhere within 3 streets of No and Ino, you didn't need television. Their relationship alone was a full-time Nollywood series: action, romance, suspense, heartbreak, comedy, even horror sometimes, and unlike regular series, this one had no closing credits. The streets were the audience, and the couple. They were the stubborn lead actors who refused to take direction. No, short for Nathaniel, was the tall, restless type. He didn't just walk, he marched everywhere as if somebody was chasing him. His mouth worked faster than his legs, and he had this way of turning every casual conversation into a competition. To No, life was a race. The person in front of him was already winning, so he had to overtake, even if the person was just walking to buy akara. Ino, on the other hand, was his perfect opposite and yet his perfect match. She was short, curvy in the kind of way that tailors used to advertise lace, and her smile could melt frozen akara straight out of the freezer. But her temper. Oh! Her temper was Lagos traffic, quick to block the whole road, and slow to clear. Together, they made what neighbors called a dangerous combination. They could argue about something as small as pepper in beans in the morning, and still be seen dancing under streetlights in the night, spraying themselves imaginary money and laughing like new lovers. In their 3 years of dating, they had broken up at least 8 times. And these were not silent, dignified breakups. No. Each breakup was a whole production with Facebook status updates like, "Some people will never appreciate a diamond until it's gone," posted by Ino. WhatsApp voice notes that sounded like war declarations from No. And one unforgettable incident where Ino returned No slippers through a dispatch rider. The note on it read, "Since you walked out of my life, collect the shoes you wore." And yet, like 2 stubborn goats tied to the same post, they always found their way back to each other. So, when the news broke that No and Ino were finally getting married, the street didn't know whether to buy also Reby for celebration, or buy popcorn to watch the drama. Some neighbors were already placing bets on how long the marriage would last. One mama at the roadside provision store swore she would give it 6 months maximum. Another man at the barber shop said, "Forget. These two know fire and petrol, but not them sabi how to quench 'em." But No and Ino didn't care. They started wedding planning with a seriousness that shocked even their enemies. The only problem? Their planning style had the same unpredictability as their relationship. They kept details like RSVP secret. The guest list was treated like a classified government document. And they argued about everything, from how many chairs to rent, to whether the MC should be funny or just quiet. The street, however, started to notice something strange. Anytime anyone asked No about the wedding, he would repeat one line. "We want only people who truly love us to be there." And Ino would nod with a mysterious smile, the kind of smile a cat gives when it's watching a fat pigeon that doesn't know it's being washed. At first, people thought it was just their usual dramatic talk. But then, 2 weeks before the wedding, Mama Peace, Ino's auntie who was as loud as she was nosy, overheard them plotting. No's voice carried clearly through the veranda that night. "We will know who cares by who shows up at the church for us. The reception is for celebration, not for strangers to come and carry jollof on their head." Ino laughed so hard she almost dropped her drink. But Mama P stood frozen like an antenna receiving fresh gossip. And once she heard it, the whole street heard it. By the next morning, the gist was everywhere. "You say No and Ino won't do wedding wey no go feed people. Huh. Them they craze. Who won't go church again in this Lagos sun just to chop rice? Abeg, me I go reception direct. Rice no dey heaven. Rice dey hall." Now, in Lagos society, there is a special breed of wedding guests known as the rice first people. These are people who have mastered the art of skipping the church service and appearing directly at the reception, dressed in their brightest clothes, taking selfies at the reception entrance, and positioning near the buffet line before the bride and groom even arrive. For them, missing a reception was like missing rapture. So, As the rumors spread, the invitees split into two camps. The loyalists, those who promised to sit in the church from start to finish to prove their love. The rice first crew, those who boldly declared, "No reception I dey go. Pastor sermon no dey feel bell." By the week of the wedding, the tension was thick enough to cut with a knife. People were whispering, planning strategies, even forming alliances like it was a political campaign. Some people swore they would trick the system, others sharpened their appetite and prayed for mercy. But what nobody knew was that No had already prepared Operation No program, no plate. Tailors were making last-minute adjustments, galley were being tied at dangerous angles that looked like satellite dishes, and barbershops were running overtime. Somewhere across town, 3 men in shiny suits were debating strategy. Should we go to the church small, then sneak out early? Abeg forget, by the time we reach reception, all the goat meat done finish. True oh. But if them no serve us because of this their waller plan, e go shame person. Meanwhile, in her bridal room, Ino was being transformed. The bridesmaids hovered over her like workers in a factory, one fixing her hair, another dabbing foundation, another adjusting the long train of her gown. The breeze outside seemed to know that something was cooking, swaying the curtains with suspicious excitement. Across town, No was pacing his small sitting room like a general preparing for battle. Wearing only a white singlet, he backed instructions into his phone. Make sure no food reach any table until I give the signal. You hear me? Nobody without church program go chop. Wait for my signal. His best man rolled his eyes but kept quiet. This was No's war plan, and he was sticking to it. The church service. By 10 a.m., St. Michael's Anglican in Suralia was decorated beautifully. Fresh flowers lined the altar, the pews were polished, and the choir's voices floated like sweet perfume. But there was one problem: half the seats were empty. At the front sat elderly church members. In the middle, a few loyal friends of the couple. At the back, an uncle was already nodding off in his suit, dreaming of jollof rice. Outside, however, was a completely different story. Not one of them had set foot in the church. One man in a red cap was overheard saying, "Abeg, when them finish all that, love is patient, love is kind, talk, no here I go enter straight." Another woman with galley high enough to scrape the ceiling laughed. "Church is for their hearts. Reception is for our stomach." Inside the church, Ino sat in front, bouquet in hand, smiling for camera like all was well. But her eyes were busy, scanning the pews. Too many empty seats. Too many familiar faces missing. Just then, her friend Shade, who had gone on undercover mission to the reception, sneaked back in and bent low beside her. The kind whisper she dropped. No, that one almost made Ino forget she was still in white gown. Ino, more than half of the people no even come here oh. They are already sitting down at the hall like people waiting for Nipper to bring light. Ino's smile froze. She turned her head slightly toward No. His expression didn't change. He simply leaned closer and whispered, "Perfect. Let them relax. They think we are joking." No wasn't joking. Throughout the vows, his mind wasn't just on "till death do us part." It was on the secret instruction he had given the caterers that morning. Nobody without proof of attending church gets food. Operation No program, no plate. To enforce the rule, he had even recruited his younger cousin, a professional bouncer known on the street as Bullet, to serve as wedding security. By the time the service ended, the few loyal guests clapped and took pictures. Meanwhile, outside, the Rice First Army was already in full formation at the reception entrance. Phones out. Stomachs ready. Eyes locked on the buffet. When No and Ino finally drove in with their white Benz, the reception exploded. The MC, a tall man in a purple blazer with a voice like a megaphone, had been hyping the restless crowd for almost an hour. The air was thick with the smell of jollof rice, fried meat, puff-puff, and freshly baked meat pie. Even the most spiritual guest would forget prayer points in such an aroma. The couple entered dancing, sprayed with naira notes, the talking drums vibrating the hall. No smiled, but not the smile of a man overwhelmed by love. It was the smile of a man about to detonate a bomb. After they sat at the high table, No caught the eye of the head caterer, a no-nonsense woman in a green apron. He gave her the tiniest nod. That was the signal. The MC's voice boomed into the microphone. Ladies and gentlemen, we will begin serving food now. However, only those who attended the church service will be served first. Kindly present your church program to the ushers at your table. The silence that followed was thick enough to cut with a knife. At one table, a man in agbada laughed nervously. Did you hear that? Is it a joke? At another, a woman frantically searched her bag, hoping she had mistakenly carried someone's program. A young man in sunglasses muttered, "Which kind exam hall be this?" But the ushers, already briefed, moved from table to table. Those with programs served immediately. Those without told politely but firmly to wait. At first, the food line moved quietly. Then came whispers. The whispers turned into murmurs. The murmurs turned into loud grumbling. One man stood up and confronted the usher. "So because I no sit for church, I no fit chop. Abeg, serve me jollof before I vex o." The usher only smiled sweetly. "Sorry sir. No program, no plate." From the high table, No sipped his drink slowly, watching the drama unfold like a football match. Ino leaned in and whispered, "Your plan is working." At first, people tried to respect themselves. They whispered, grumbled, hissed small hiss, and consoled their bellies with Fanta and malt. But hunger is a dangerous spirit. Hunger can turn a bishop into a bandit. By the time the ushers served the third table of loyal church people, with steaming jollof and fat goat meat, the rest of the hall could no longer take it. The smell alone was like insult. Red party rice with that smoky bottom pot flavor, fried plantain shining like polished gold, puff-puff bouncing in trays, and those small chops arranged neatly in paper packs as if angels packaged them. The Rice First crew snapped. One man in native stood up dramatically, slammed his hand on the table and shouted, "My friends, enough is enough. Is it church program we came here for, or rice program?" The hall roared in agreement. Another woman with girly shaped like satellite dish added, "Abeg, no be offering we dey pay for church. This one no reception, and we demand our rights." That was how Table 9, a notorious table filled with self-proclaimed rice veterans, declared open rebellion. They marched straight to the buffet like protesters. But standing there, blocking the trays, was Bullet, No's bouncer cousin. Bullet was 6'4", chest wide like DSTV dish, with arms that looked like they were borrowed from Hulk. He wore black shades indoors, even though the hall lights were bright. On his chest, he had pinned a fake badge that read, "Security." When Table 9 reached the food line, Bullet simply crossed his arms. No program, no plate. The leader of the group, a pot-bellied uncle in white agbada, tried to bluff. "Young man, do you know who I am?" Bullet didn't blink. "Yes." "Hungry." The hall scattered in laughter. Even the MC nearly dropped his microphone. But Uncle Agbada wasn't backing down. He tried to grab a spoon to serve himself, and that was when Bullet gently placed one heavy hand on his shoulder. The uncle froze like a goat that just saw pepper. "Sir," Bullet said calmly, "if you touch that rice, you will attend hospital reception instead of wedding reception. The uncle retreated immediately. Hunger strategies. As Bullet guarded the buffet like a lion, the Rice First crew had no choice but to get creative. People began to devise different strategies. The borrowed program method. Some guests tried to borrow church programs from loyalists who had already eaten. But Nor's ushers were sharp, they marked each program with red ink once it had been used. Anyone presenting an unmarked copy got food. Anyone trying to recycle one got bounced. One woman tried to borrow her cousin's program and got caught. The usher just smiled and asked, "Madam, why is your cousin's name Esther but your girlie has Mama Kemi written across it?" The woman hissed and walked away in shame. The stomach protest. By 3 p.m., stomachs were already grumbling like generators without fuel. Some guests started banging on the tables in protest, shouting, "We want rice! We want rice!" The chant spread across the hall. For a moment, it felt less like a wedding reception and more like a political rally. Nor sat at the high table watching, sipping his Chapman cocktail like a villain in a Nollywood film. Ino leaned in and whispered, "Babe, maybe we should serve them small. Look at how they are sweating." But Nor shook his head firmly. "No. Today they will learn. Rice is not by force. It is by love." The boiling point. The breaking point came when one stubborn guest, a slim young man with oversized shades and borrowed blazer, decided to outsmart the system. He waited until an usher brought food to the loyal tables, then quietly snatched a meat pie from the tray while pretending to shake hands. Unfortunately for him, Bullet saw everything. In 2 seconds flat, Bullet was standing beside him. "Return the pie." The young man froze. "It fell inside my pocket." Bullet raised one eyebrow. "Remove it." At this point, the Rice First crew had had enough. They gathered near the entrance, plotting to storm the buffet together in one final rebellion. The whole hall buzzed like a marketplace. But Nor wasn't done yet. He had one last move up his sleeve, something that would finish his enemies completely. The hall was already shaking. Hungry guests were plotting like co-leaders. Bullet was flexing his chest, daring anybody to try him. Not just they sip Chapman with evil smile. Then boom, Nor grabbed the mic. "Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for honoring us today. Quick announcement, for those who did not attend the church service, your food will be packed and sent home with you tomorrow." Silence. Pure silence. You could hear one plate drop at the back. Then Walla started. One man shouted, "Tomorrow ko. Who they alive by tomorrow? My stomach is alive now." Another woman nearly fainted. "So all this girlie I tie, not for takeaway I go collect." The reception hall shimmered with lace and ankara, girlie stacked sky high, a border flapping like eagle wings, and bead necklaces glinting under the chandelier. The drummers were still at it, but the real beat was coming from hungry stomachs. The Rice First crew finally lost control. Chairs screeched, plates clattered, and a few guests in matching osoebi lunged toward the buffet like athletes at the Olympics. But Bullet, broad-chested in his starched white kaftan, red cap tilted forward, spread his arms across the aisle like Third Mainland Bridge. One by one, guests bounced off his chest like ping-pong balls. Aunties hissed, girlie shaking. Uncles in their flowing agbada muttered, "Ino rich like this." Ino, in her glittering ivory lace, bouquet still in hand, laughed nervously. She leaned toward Nor and whispered, "Nor, this thing fit turn right oh." Nor adjusted his cap, a calm smile on his face. "Let them riot. Rice must respect God." By evening, half the guests left in anger, stomachs empty but phones full of gist. The loyal few who had programs were licking their fingers with joy. Nor and Ino danced into the night, while Bullet stood guard like commander of Rice Army. The next morning, Lagos no rest. Twitter, WhatsApp groups, even church fellowship, everywhere was on fire. Videos flew up and down, bullets holding the meat pie like police exhibit, uncles shouting "We want rice," aunties fainting dramatically. #RiceGate was #1 trend. Comments were brutal. Imagine attending wedding, going home with empty stomach and full disgrace. Nor's wedding or Hunger Games. Bullet deserves National Award for rice protection. Ino's family wasn't smiling. Her auntie, Mama Caro, called an emergency meeting. She slammed the table so hard her jelly shook. How dare they embarrass us like this? My own sister's daughter, and my mouth did not taste jollof rice. Abomination. Ino tried to explain. Auntie, it was No's idea. But Mama Caro raised hand dramatically. Keep quiet. This battle is not yours, it is mine. The revenge. 2 months later, it was Mama Coro's 60th birthday party. Big one. Hall booked, DJ blasting, coolers lined up. Jollof, fried rice, egusi, goat meat, everything. When No and Ino arrived, they were ushered straight to the high table. The food came out in trays, aroma filling the air. Everybody was served generously. Then, just as No lifted his spoon, Mama Coro grabbed the mic. Ladies and gentlemen, please note, only those who attended the family morning prayer session today are allowed to eat. No prayer, no plate. The hall exploded with laughter. People clapped, some nearly fell off their chairs. No froze, spoon in midair. Ino buried her face in her hands. Bullet, who followed them, just sighed and muttered. This rice war no day end. And that's how the Jollof Cold War between No's family and Mama Coro officially began. Up till today, if you attend any of their family parties, you hear the joke whispered around the buffet. Better hold your program, or your plate go dry.